Catus Maximus here. This time we're here to talk about extensions. This isn't going to be a particularly long video, but I did want to show how there's such a variation in actual extension length and what may be advertised as a 6-inch. It seems more modern days when they advertise a specific length like 3 or 6 inch, they're exactly 3 or 6 inches. But that isn't always the case, and it's just kind of odd how many different length extensions there really are, and to show a few different types such as wobble extensions and the usual size comparisons. And we'll go ahead and start out with the 1-inch drive because it's so huge and it's blocking up a lot of the camera view. Move on to 3/4 inch, and then we'll finish off with the smaller sizes, 1/2 inch and below, actually being smaller sizes in this review. These are a couple of short 3/4 inch extensions here. We've got one nice thing about extensions is really, if you're going to get extensions, try to get a 3-piece set, a short, a medium, and a long if you're going to buy them individually. So like on this inch drive, this is just a real short stubby one. We have, of course, an impact extension. Impact inch drive extensions are just so massively overbuilt and huge. They just absolutely dwarf something that's like 1/2 inch drive. This is 1/2 inch drive. And it looks like a child's play toy compared to something like this. But of course, an extension like this is meant to take several thousand foot-pounds of torque. We'll move into something that was also popular several decades ago, which was extensions were used with breaker bars. These are some more inch drive. This is an old Blackhawk, and we have an old Proto here. Real short on the Proto. The Proto was pretty nice because they actually hand ground 8 facets on the drive square. I've never seen that before on any tool where they hand ground the drive square. So this is a large 16-inch extension. And like on this Blackhawk, the idea a long time ago was that you would use extensions as breaker bars. So instead of having like a breaker bar or a ratchet or something, you would just stick a handle through the extension itself and use it as basically a T-handle. That became less popular because there is a little bit less strength because of this big hole through the drive end. It makes them bigger and it's more inconvenient. So that style ended up going away. They're still kind of sold as specialty, but really if you see any tools with the holes in the extension, you know that they're rather old. And what also is surprising is really long extensions, such as this long 3/8 Craftsman here. If we look, it's barely any longer than this Proto, and this Proto would be considered an intermediate length for inch drive. So that's just another idea of scaling, is that a small extension in inch drive would be considered long and huge in smaller drives. And since I haven't reviewed many tools from this company, actually I don't think any, this is a Truth extension. And Truth tools were never very pretty. They never really made it very far, but they were pretty nice. One thing that was set them apart is Truth was really a big believer in multi-stage heat treatments. And Truth tools are very durable for their vintage because of that, because they really had an excellent heat treatment. You can see this extension has had a pipe wrench used on it, and it's barely gouged into it. And this is made quite a long time ago. It's been fairly well used, but I just wanted to show that Truth tools are really odd, and all you ever really see on the sockets, they'll say Truth, Mankato, Minnesota. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but things like extensions will just be a little stamp that says Truth, and they're actually pretty nice. We have 3/4 inch drive extensions. They're all lined up even on the base, and this is just to show you how interesting the length differences are. I did get an old Ace hardware kit, and it came with 3 extensions, a long, a medium, and a short, and you can see where they tapered it down just a little bit. That's fine. Proto did that too. I think they did it to save a little bit on material costs, but I've never believed that the ones that were turned down were quite as strong as ones that were just full diameter all the way to the top. And then this is a Sunex here, and we can compare that against the Proto. The Protos, I think, are a little more compact, maybe a little bit higher quality, but the Sunexes are pretty nice as well. But you can see that all these different extensions here all have surprisingly different lengths, even though they're all 3/4 inch drive extensions, and they've all been advertised to be basically 8-inch extensions, except for the Sunex. This was 10-inch. Let me go ahead and get those out of the way here. And then this shows the remainder of the variety. You can't even really see all the 1/4 inch. Let's go ahead and push those over. The one thing I was going to mention about all these 1/4 inches is I've talked about the Mastercraft Pro set. And so what we've got here is we've got, we've got SKs and Snap-ons, and they're all the same lengths, pretty much exactly. And for some reason, the Mastercraft Pro came with a really short one, much shorter than the traditional ones. And their intermediate length was not the same either. And so that was what was odd about these 1/4 inch extensions. The Mastercraft Pros are the two intermediate lengths. And it is nice to have a varying length of extensions when you need one that just fits the right space, rather than just having an extension that's long or an extension that's short. And of course they get very long, like this 48 inch, and the tool trucks, they have huge extensions. I've seen like 4-foot long extensions. They're absolutely amazing. I don't think I mentioned at the beginning of this review, it was more than 80 different extensions. And so down here we have our 1/2 inch. It's about the same deal. We have the Harbor Freight locking extensions, and I've done a review on these by themselves. Here's a look at the Impact one. They have a nice little collar, a pretty good ball protrusion. What's odd is they only sell this one Impact. This is the only one I've seen there. But there are other styles, such as this, which is the reducing, which is kind of interesting. It's an Impact extension, 1/2 inch drive, but it actually reduces down to 3/8. I thought that was kind of interesting, and that is a Harbor Freight. Then we have both old and new Harbor Freight 7 extensions here. These are Wobble extensions, and how they work, let me get a socket. As they have this special shape on the anvil, it's kind of like a trapezoid or pyramid shape. That way you can put a socket on it, and it will be able to wobble around. Kind of like a universal joint with just a little bit of articulation, maybe about 5 degrees. These work pretty well, but there's two issues with Wobble extensions, of course, because they are narrower at the base. They will break more easily, and this sharp points, the flats where all the pressure is going, they do round out. I'll show you that. And here it is on the 3/8. You can see they really start mushing out. These are best used with air ratchets. If you use them with big impact wrenches, it'll really just wear them out super fast. So back to this, I wanted to show the old Harbor Freight extensions, Wobble extensions, were a standard Wobble extension, but they had this undercut, where the newer style ones do not. And that's what's interesting, is that these are laser etched, but they didn't say Harbor Freight, where these are Pittsburgh Pros. And so if we take a look here, this undercut allows you to use as a, come on, focus, Wobble extension, and then you can, there we go. And then you can use it, push it in, and it'll run straight, and the socket won't wobble around. You can pull it out, it'll wobble. Sometimes they do that when you don't want them to, and so it's kind of nice to have both styles. But they stopped selling this style in favor of regular ones, probably because they got some complaints and they didn't want to sell both. So regular ones are just a standard. They don't really lock into place. This one does a little bit, but normally they don't lock into place. And so that's one thing to mention. Other than that, the only other tips I could offer on extensions is you don't really need that many of them, to tell you the truth. And generally speaking, these locking extensions are pretty handy, because oftentimes you're in reaching into a deep space, and if the socket gets stuck on the fastener, that can be frustrating and get it back off. Or when you're doing spark plugs down the spark plug hole. So I do recommend the locking extensions, even though having the hole on the drive anvil may make it not quite as strong. Being an extension, usually they'll twist and fail somewhere in the shank before the drive anvil fails. And when you're buying them, one thing to make sure of is long extensions oftentimes are not totally straight. It's just in the nature of trying to forge out a long piece of steel. So one thing I recommend is to make sure you look down and twist any long extensions that you may be looking to purchase to make sure that it's not too badly bent. It really gets frustrating when you have a long extension and it's wobbling around because the thing's so bent. And on a final note, even though the Harbor Freight extensions are well priced, and I'm going to do a quick review on them, compared to higher quality things like Craftsman or Sunex, I'll tell you the truth, out of the Harbor Freight tools that I have replaced the most, it has been extensions, because they're long and they take a lot of torsion, and the grade of steel makes much more of a difference under these kind of conditions. And what's really happened is I just put a good amount of torque on some of these impact ones, even with hand tools, and not even with impacts. I once, used one of these with the Harbor Freight's own half-inch drive, and the first hit, the square just sheared right off. I used one of these reduction ones, and you can understand where it would shear off, but when it sheared off on me, I basically didn't even feel it. It was like, wow, the tool broke, and I didn't even know it was breaking. And so that's why I'd really recommend, get some of the Harbor Freight ones, but if they fail on you, and you're always using a 6 or a 12-inch extension, buy that one extension from some other higher quality brand. And that's one last thing I'd mention. And I think I'll do a review of just these Harbor Freight impacts, because I haven't done that before. Anyway, once again, thank you so much for watching. This was a bit of a rambling extension review, but it's hard to have a lot to say about such a simple item. I'm surprised I got 10 minutes out of this. Please subscribe. Catus Maximus out.